Hey everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Can You Hack It? I am your host Ben, and this week we're back on Hackthebox.eu taking a look at a Linux system called Hawk. So as you can see here, its IP address is 10.10.10.102. So if we just pull up our console, we're already connected. I'll make a directory for Hawk. And then I'll make a directory called Nmap in here. And then we'll start out with an Nmap. So we'll do Nmap-T5 to make the timing aggressive, SC and SV to enumerate scripts and versions, lowercase v to be verbose so that we get output while it's running, OA to output all formats, and we'll write those to Nmap/quick. And then finally the IP address of the box, which is 10.10.10.102. And so right away we can see port 80 is open, we can see 22, which is SSH, 21, which is FTP, and 8082, which we don't know what that is, but likely it's some sort of web server. And so while that's enumerating, let's go ahead and just pull up a browser and take a look at both the website on port 80 and the one on 8082. So it looks like this is a Drupal install. And this is an H2 console, which is Hadoop, I believe, but we're not allowed to get to it because it doesn't allow remote connections. So likely we'll have to get access to this once we're on the box, but it's just something to keep in mind. And I'm assuming we can't just guess here. Sometimes you can enumerate accounts through these forms. So root is not a recognized user, admin, unable to send email. So admin is a legitimate user, so we could enumerate user accounts through here. Let's go back to here and see if this is finished up. It has, so it sees that 8082 is a H2 console. It sees that we're running Apache HTTPD version 2.4.2.9 on Ubuntu, which is Drupal 7. And then finally our FTP servers VS FTP D303. So we can start out by scanning the Drupal installation. If you don't have it already, there's a tool called Droopescan. You can install it with pip install Droopescan, which I think I already have it, but we can try it anyway. Droopescan. Yeah, so in my case it's already installed, so we do Droopescan dash, I think it's just -u, and then 10.10.10.102. And I got something wrong there, so we'll see what the help is. Okay, so we need a scan Drupal. And so while that's running, let's pop open another tab and let's take a look at the FTP site. So FTP 10.10.10.102. And we'll log in with anonymous, or try to, anonymous. And so it did allow that. If we do an ls, we see messages. Oops. Oh, it's LA. Yeah, so just messages, cd messages, ls. Don't see anything in here. That's LA, and there's actually a hidden file called drupal.txt.enc. So if we do get.drupal.txt.enc, we can exit out of this now. Switch back real quick. We're still running our scan. So if we do a, let's rename that file actually, mv.drupal to drupal.txt.enc so that it's not hidden anymore. Do a file Drupal. We can see it's an OpenSSL encoded data with a salted password and it's base64 encoded. So let's go ahead and cat it real quick. Let's go ahead and create a decoded version of it. So we'll send that to base64-d and we'll pipe that to drupal.txt.enc .decoded. So then if we cat Drupal, okay, and so we can see it is salted because in salted ones, the first 8 bytes, I believe, are just salted, and then the salt is the next 8 bytes, and then the data. So if we do an LSLA, we should be able to see how big this is. It's 176 bytes. So if we subtract the 8 bytes of the header and the 8 bytes, I believe it's 8 bytes of the salt, we can look real quick. Open SSL salted format. And we see here files have an 8-bit signature, which is that salted that we saw, followed by an 8-byte salt. So that leaves 160 bytes, which would be 1280 bits, which means that it's likely, I mean, it doesn't have to be, but it's likely to be a block cipher just because of how big that is. And it either is going to be a 256-bit or 128-bit probably. And the way that I get to that is, first of all, the 1280, which is the number of bits that the data length is, it's divisible evenly by 256 or by 128. It's not divisible evenly by 192, which is another common block size, or 512. And so that means that either 256, which happens to be the default in OpenSSL, I think, or 64. So we can start out by going after the 256 and see if that works. Let's switch back real quick and see what we found here. So we found a couple themes, a couple interesting URLs. One's just an admin login, it looks like. It identified the version as 7.58, and then there's some plugins found. So for right now, that's not super interesting to us until we can get a login, which is probably what's contained in here. So if we pop open a browser and Google for there's a good tool for brute forcing, brute force open SSL. This is actually it, the first link here. So brute force salted open SSL. We clone this. Git clone. We can cd into there. ls. So there's an autogen file. And so we should be able to run this. If for some reason you get an error about auto reconf not being found, you might need to do an apt install autoconf. In my case, it should be on here. So autogen.sh. It's going to go through and do its thing, and now we should be able to do a /configure. And if configure errors out, which it will if you don't have the OpenSSL libraries, you'll need to do a run apt install libssl-dev, and that'll get you what you need in order to be able to do configure. And finally, you'll just do a make and a make install. You don't need to do the make install, but if you do the make install, it'll put it in a place where you can just run this command from anywhere. Alternatively, you could just copy it to where you wanted to have it at. So if we drop back down into our regular directory and do a brute force an SSL and do a help so we can see what the commands are. So we'll probably want to do threads. So -t, do like 100 or something. -f is going to be the file that we're going to read our passwords from. We'll do rocku.txt. So let's see what else we want. We want -v, probably print our progress every 5 seconds. So we'll do a -v5. We'll do a -1, which stops us at the first password candidate. And then we're going to need a cipher, which it looks like the default is AES 256 CBC. So that's likely to be the one that was used. And then we'll need a digest, and it looks like it defaults to MD5. So let's just run it like this: brute force -t100-f user share word list rocku. -v, we'll output every second, let's say, -1. And we'll not even set the cipher since AES 256 is the default, and it's a likely possibility for this given the length of the encoded text. And then we'll finally give it the file name, which is drupal.txt.enc.decoded. So we run this, and it should go pretty fast. And it looks like the password wasn't found. It's saying that it may be encrypted with a different cipher and or different digest. Now it points out here that the newer versions of OpenSSL use SHA-256 by default, so let's go ahead and change that. Let's leave the cipher the same because it's still possible that that is the correct cipher. It seems more likely that we just happen to have the wrong digest. And so I think digest was -D, and we'll do SHA-256. And it found the password pretty much immediately. Found the password to be friends. We can test to see if this is right. The way this tool worked is it basically runs it, tries to decrypt, and looks to see if it gets, I think it's 90% ASCII back. If it's 90% ASCII, then it assumes it must have been the right thing. So sometimes you need to tweak that. If your file, your decrypted file, isn't likely to contain ASCII, you may need to mess with that, otherwise it won't report that it found something. So if we do OpenSSL, I think it's ENC, and -D to decrypt AES 256, and MD is SHA-256, salt because it's salted. Our in file is drupal.txt.encoded or encrypted.decoded, and our out will just be drupal.txt, and then K for our password, which is friends. And it gave us a warning about a depreciated key derivation used. That's fine, it should have still put something out. So if we cat drupal.txt, we can see Daniel, following the password for the portal. Pencil keyboard scanner 123, let us know when the portal is ready. Kind regards, IT department. So let's go ahead and try this out and see if it works. Oops. Bring this back up. So they sent it to Daniel. We can do a quick enumeration here. Daniel. Looks like Daniel isn't a correct account. Since they say let us know when the portal's ready, it's possible that Daniel's the admin. So we'll just try admin since we know that's a good account. Paste in the password. We won't save it, so that allows us to log in. And so now that we're in Drupal, if you're familiar with Drupal, the most likely way we're going to get somewhere with this is through modules, because you're able to upload modules. Modules are basically just PHP code that's packaged with some special hooks and stuff in it. So first thing we want to look for in the list is the uploads module, or update manager, which allows you to install or update modules via the web interface. So we'll save the configuration with that enabled. And now we can see up here we have an install new module. So what we can do is see if we can find, there's a Drupal shell module. Yeah, this one. And so if we hit install module here, you'll notice we can give a URL or we can upload it manually. We can't use a URL on Hackthebox because it doesn't have external connectivity. So what we'll need to do is download. And it looks like there's downloads for major version 8 and for 7. Since we're working on a Drupal 7 system, we'll want to download this one. And we'll want to download the tar.gz. We'll save that, copy it over here, cp downloads shell tar.gz. Okay, so now that we've got that here, let's just upload it to the site. Oops, sorry, went to the wrong place. So we'll install that. It's now been installed. We'll click on Enable Newly Installed Modules. We'll scroll all the way to the bottom where it is. We'll hit Save Configuration. So now it should be enabled. If we try and go to /shell, I think it is, we can see the shell. We can see that we're in var www HTML. If we do an ls, we don't get anything back. If we do who am I, ID. So there's something going wrong with this. We can take a look real quick. So that all looks fine. Everything's at 200. Let's try running our command again, ID. And we can see a call to Ajax send command. It's a post. It returns a 500 error, so service unavailable. And if we take a look at our parameters, it looks like we're sending ID base64 encoded to it probably. We've got some sort of token. And then we look at our response and we see call to undefined function ereg in shell handle command. So what's probably going on here is that this function call in PHP I think was depreciated in, I'm not even going to try and guess the version, in some version of PHP. I'm guessing we have a newer version. Let's extract the contents of this real quick. tar-f shell. And so what we can see here is the contents of this file. Now this is where the bulk of the code is going to be, is in this shell.module. So if we edit it, or actually here, let's edit it somewhere else. I'll edit in some blind text because it's a little bit easier to see. Dropbox, CTF, Hackthebox, videos, Hawk, shell, shell.module. And so you can see here it's just PHP code. It's got some different functions. We'll do a Control H. Oh, and it looks like I actually already have that search in here. So we'll look for ereg and we'll replace it with preg match. Now sometimes we've got to redo the regexes that are in here in order to get them to work. In this case I think we'll be okay because these two functions here, which I think are the ones that are causing the issues, I don't see anything that would need to be changed. So if we just hit replace all, we'll save it, close it, and then let's package this back up. Let's remove rm shell x.gz, and then let's package it back up with tar-z cbf shell.tar.gz shell. And we'll try and see if we can upload it again. I had issues with this earlier, so we might need to reset the system if it fails. Let's go back to modules. Let's disable shell. Let's go to uninstall. Let's uninstall shell. So now shell should be gone, which it looks like it is. And then if we go to configuration, performance, and we clear the cache, cache has now been cleared, we should be able to re-upload it, I think. So we browse shell.tar.gz, it says it's already installed. So I'll use the magic of video. We're now able to upload our shell. And so if we enable the newly added module, and let's try going back to it again. So this time if we do ls, and it looks like it works, ID, so we can see that we're account www data. So what we can try and do now is see if we can get a reverse shell so that we're not stuck in this little goofy window. So first let's start a netcat listener here locally, nc-lbnp4444. And then we we can try and see if just a simple simple reverse shell will work, something like bash-i. And you can find this one-liner on, actually here, let's just copy it from there so I can show you. Reverse shells. So on reverse shell cheat sheet on Pentest Monkey, we'll take this first one here. Oops, which seems like it doesn't work too often, but it's worth giving a shot. So 10, 10, 14, 14, 4, 4, 4, 4. So that returned, which usually isn't a great sign. We're still listening. So instead we can try this one, which is a lot more successful usually. Where's it at? Right here. Where it's using some named pipes, 10, 10, 14, 14, 4, 4, 4, 4. So that one didn't return right away, but it still didn't connect. So what we can try instead is seeing if maybe it's just something, oops, I keep hitting the keys to copy in the terminal. We can see if it's just an issue with trying to execute it directly through this kind of pseudo shell that's running. So if instead we do, I think vim, try and edit a file and put it in there. We'll call it revshell.sh. And so since this can't edit files, they do some goofy thing which may work where we click this link and we should be able to edit the contents. So if we paste that in here, everything still looks good. Submit it, file has been updated. And the reason I did the /// is to drop us back out since we're in a current, we have this current working directory here. And a lot of the time through web stuff, just using like /temp/revshell.sh won't actually drop us back to the root. It'll just do some funky stuff up top. Oops, I didn't mean to actually drop this out into its own window, but we should be able to close that now. And we'll need to make it executable, so chmod plus x // temp revshell.sh. And then finally, we'll see if we can execute it. So bash-c / temp revshell.sh. Didn't return right away. And we've got a shell, it looks like. Who am I? Oops. Who am I? So we're dev data. So it's the same account, obviously, which is what we would expect. But now we've got a shell that's a little more usable. We may even just be able to do bash. Oops, looks like I broke it. Close out of this, do it again. Actually, if we wanted to use bash, we can probably just do this. Bash. Submit. See if we have command history here. We do. Okay, and so it looks like we've got a bash shell now. So first thing we want to do is start enumerating for a way to get a privilege escalation. But before we do that, let's just see who's on this account, or sorry, on this system. So if we do /home or ls/home, so it looks like we've got one person, Daniel. I assume we can't read his directory. Can. Let's see if we can actually read the user.txt file, which I could tell by an ls with more details, but that was a cut. Oh, so we can read the user flag, so we can get the user flag right now, even though it's in Daniel's account. Those are the first 16 digits of it. Somebody was actually asking on a different video, on the Smasher video, why I try not to show the flags, which on that one I think I slipped up in a spot so you were actually able to see it. The reason I do that is just in case. I mean, it doesn't really matter. Since they're retired, you can't get any points for them. But people could still go through, look at the videos real quick, find all the flags, put them in just so that their account shows that they've done a ton of boxes that they haven't even made an attempt to do. So it's more just something to make it that little itty bitty bit harder for people to just go and collect a bunch of flags. Obviously, you could just follow along with what I'm doing in the video and you can get the whole flag yourself, which you're encouraged to do if you want. So I guess short answer is there's not really much point to it. It's just something that I do. I think I noticed IPsec had been doing it, and so I started doing the same thing. There's no real reason behind it for me other than what I already explained. I mean, honestly, if you see it, you see it. It's not the end of the world. So let's start enumerating a little bit. We're already in the web directory. We can download linenum, but usually before I go to that trouble, I like to just check a couple of things first. So if we do sudo-l, we're not in a TTY, so we can fix that. If we do python-c, import pty, pty.spawn, in bash. And Python is not found. It can be installed with. Okay, so maybe we have Python 3 on here. And if we don't, it's not the end of the world. So if that works. I think it did. And so now we do sudo-l, wants the password for www data, which we don't have. Oops. And then I went and hit the wrong key combination. Luckily, we should be able to get back in pretty easily. So usually before doing linenum or something, I like to just poke around a bit. Since this is a Drupal installation, we know that we should have a settings file. If you don't know that, you could Google for it. But I think it's in just the default directory. We've got a web config here too. I'm not sure what that is. I don't see anything super interesting in here. So we should have LA, got a few directories. So sites, I think, is what we're interested in. And I think there's a default site, or they might have renamed it to something else. So default. And then we've got our settings.php. Looks like we have a default settings also. So if we see, we should just be able to cat settings.php and grep for password. I think there's some multiple spots where there could be a password in here. So we see a lot of these look like they're commented out. There is one that's Drupal for Hawk. So what we can do is see if maybe there's some password reuse. So cat password. Looks like we have a root account and it's the only account. Oh, and Daniel. So Daniel's one we had already seen. It actually looks like, it's interesting, his shell is Python 3 instead of Bash. And remember, we saw SSH on here, so let's just quickly see if we can SSH with either of those accounts with that password. So SSH root at 10.10.10.102 Drupal for Hawk. So that failed. Daniel Drupal for Hawk. I think I mistyped that. Apparently not. So it looks like we are in, and we're in a Python shell. By the way, some people ask why I decided to try and use the password in this spot, for example. Anytime I find passwords anywhere, I generally try and see if I can reuse them somewhere. So either in SSH sessions, I could have done a SU through the the shell that we already had, the reverse shell. But anytime I find passwords, try and use them. Doesn't matter if they're meant for somewhere else. Try and use them because people have a tendency to reuse passwords a lot. And these challenges are kind of contrived, so it's even more likely that that's going to happen. So now we need to break out of this this Python 3 shell, which luckily I think is just as easy as import subprocess and then subprocess dot call, I think. And then I think this will work. And so there we go. Now we've got a bash shell as Daniel, which is a little goofy since it's through SSH. I'm actually getting myself confused thinking that I'm going through some sort of reverse shell, but we're actually in through SSH. So because we're in through SSH, we've already gotten the user.txt, the user flag, so we don't need to get that. But we remember at the beginning, we actually saw that the H2 console, which did not allow remote connections. So we can do one of two things. We can try to edit the configuration to allow remote connections, but I believe that's going to require a ps-aux. I believe that's going to require us to be root in order to restart it, and if that's the case, then that's not going to help us, since the only other way to restart it without being root would be to reboot the box, which on a normal system would work, because the next time it came up it would use those values if we were even able to edit them, if there's not a permissions issue. But on this particular box they would be wiped out, so that doesn't help us. The other thing we can do, which is what I'm going to try here in just a second, yeah, it looks like all this stuff's running as root, is to do an SSH tunnel. So if we take one of our other windows here, we'll drop out of this one, and we create an SSH tunnel by doing SSH-L, and we'll forward port 8082 on our local host to 8082 on the remote host, Daniel at 10.10.10.102, and Drupal for Hawk. So we've got our Python shell backup, so we should now have our connection. We can test that by changing this to our local host, 127.0.0.1. And so that worked. Drupal for Hawk. So that fails to this test database. Now let's take a look real quick. I think with this is going to be pretty simple because H2 console exploit. Because we don't need to know the password to this particular database, because the default behavior in at least older versions of H2, which is what's running on this system, you can just create a new URL, which when you put in a URL that doesn't exist, like we'll do please subscribe, it will actually create a database called please subscribe if it doesn't exist, which I believe is what this is going to say. That's the information disclosure. Code execution. Yeah, so Web Console allows entering the name of a new database in the connection string. When the database is created, the default credentials of SA and a blank password are created. The attacker is logged in automatically. So it looks like this actually has some POC code, which we won't use in this case. So we hit test connection, test was successful, hit connect. The connection was successful. So I think instead of using this, let's find something that's a little more manual so we can explain it better. Yeah, this is a good site that has it. So basically we'll skip these earlier examples and we'll see what we can do here is create an alias, in this case called shell exec, that's going to create a function called shell exec where we can pass a command, and what it's going to do is it's going to call exec on the command name, and then it's going to return the output. So we can take this piece right here, which creates that alias. And copy it, paste it, hit run. Looks like it ran successfully because we didn't get an error. Let's take a look here real quick and see if /temp. So our file is gone for some reason. So we'll take this from the reverse shell cheat sheet again. Then let's just do this. Echo. We'll leave it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, 10, 10, or sorry, 10, 10, 14, 14. And we'll echo that to temp shell.sh, chmod temp shell.sh, chmod plus x. So now that's executable. And so now what we should be able to do on our console here is call shell exec. We'll do an ID first to see who this is running under. It should be root. And so yeah, we can see it is root. So who am I? We could obviously pull the root flag through here if we needed to. But what we'll do instead is do temp shell.sh. Oh, but we forgot to listen for a new connection. So nc-lvnp 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's try that again. So this time we notice it didn't return. And we can do a who am I. We are root. We can do an ls. We can see our database file along with the default one, the test one. So if we do cat root.txt, cat c 1 through 16, and there is our root flag. So this one was a fairly simple box. The biggest thing was a lot of people probably weren't familiar with H2 console, and so that may have taken longer. Same thing with Bruteforcing OpenSSL. It's one of those things where you just got to research it enough to see. And being thrown by the digest, I think, was one of the common ones I saw on the forums, is that people didn't realize they were supposed to put a digest in there, and so they tried a bunch of different ciphers, and it didn't help. One thing I had done originally, which I didn't do in this video because I didn't want to spend the time, was write a Python script that tries all of the ciphers. So just basically it gets that tool to list out all the ciphers it supports, and then it tries each cipher with the payload. Same thing with the digest. But in this case, you could have just stuck with the default on the cipher and just taken the hint that the tool gives you about the digest, and you should have gotten there. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the box. This one was obviously a ton shorter than the last video, which was great for me because it's a couple hours before I need to post this, and I had been putting it off. And the last video, Smasher, took forever to make. I mean, it took 16 plus hours probably to make because of a lot of little gotchas here and there and shooting in a bunch of parts and editing and putting... Anyway. So this one was a relief because it was a lot faster as one take, pretty quick, didn't have to do any prep work, and everything came out okay. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to follow me, like the video, leave a comment if you want. Follow me on Twitter or message me on Hackthebox. And I hope you have a great weekend or whatever day it is you're watching this.